Hi there, folks. This is episode 73 of the Mel Wright Real Estate Agent Show. We've got a special guest here as well. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to clear my voice there, folks. And our special guest is Tracey Franks. We've got my beloved co-host, Thomas J. Nelson. I'm going to let them introduce themselves first. Tracey, would you like to introduce yourself quickly to the audience?
Sure. Thank you, Jonathan, for having me on the show. My name is Tracey Franks. I am a marketing strategist and copywriter and editor. My company is called Word Money. You can find me at wordsandmoney.com.
I love it. And my beloved co-host, Thomas J. Nelson. Like to introduce yourself, Thomas.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'm Thomas J. Nelson. I'm a residential realtor here in America's finest city, San Diego. And you can find me on my website, thomasjnelsonrealtor.com, and, of course, on Facebook and LinkedIn.
What's the temperature today, Thomas, in the...
You know, I think we're in the low 70s right now. It's a little chilly.
So he's really roughing it, folks.
Yeah, it's really overcast today.
It's a terrible life, isn't it, Thomas?
When we get out the scarves and mittens when it hits 69.
That's right. It's a winter day in San Diego.
Right, I'm going to let Thomas do the lead couple of questions with Tracey first. So off you go.
Sure.
Go on.
Well, I'm excited to have you on, Tracey. I've known Tracey a long time. I've worked with her, and Tracey and I also ran a networking group for the Chamber of Commerce here in San Diego. So we have a lot of history. But Tracey, I want to ask you, one of the main reasons I had you on is because content is so important these days, both for our print and our digital advertising. And you're such an expert at this, I wanted you to share some knowledge. So I want to dive right in. My first question is, can you explain to our listeners the difference between persuasive writing and telling a story?
Well, often persuasive writing is what you're doing to get your audience to take some action. So, for example, if you sell a product, you would like them to buy that. If you sell a service, you want them to use you. What you're doing there is giving them reason to do business with you, persuading them, in other words, to either give you their money or their business if it's a service, that sort of thing. Telling a story comes more into play when you're, let's say, for example, you have a history in your business. Let's say you live in a small town, you've been the real estate company there for 40 years. You've got a story to tell. There's a lot of history there. That's an example of telling a story when you're marketing yourself. Okay.
And then a little bit of the difference between when you go to write for online copy versus print ad, and maybe more specifically, like the difference between if I was going to create a brochure versus a Facebook post or a Twitter post.
Yes. I mean, obviously, for an example, you've got a lot more room in a brochure. So you've got more space, more options to say things, more different types of things that you can say in a brochure. You know, Twitter, you're limited to 140 characters. So you've got to be really precise, and you've got to grab attention there in a very short, way. That's a completely different style of writing. Facebook, again, you're something in the middle there. You can have longer Facebook posts, but that's the thing about writing, is it comes in so many different forms, and you can be good at one or another, or you can have a professional who specializes in something and or is good at social media, let's say, or good at white papers or good at speeches. A lot of writers are good at different types of writing. So when you do hire a professional, it's always good to ask, do you have a specialty, and this is my need? How can you help me fill that need?
That's a great point, because somebody that may be adept at the print work may not be so savvy in the online work, because, as we were talking about, like even the difference between posting on Twitter and Facebook. Twitter, it almost feels like you got to have a great title to grab their attention versus, at least with Facebook, you can read a little bit more into it and decide if you want to continue. Do you have different strategies when it comes to posting between the two? Like, would you treat the same article the same way on both mediums?
No, because with Twitter, I liken Twitter to headline writing. I have a journalism background. A lot of times we would have to write catchy headlines. And Twitter is like that as well, in that you've got a very short time frame. You can put a link on there to something longer, clearly. But when you're sharing something on Twitter, first of all, you've got to kind of say what it is in that little 140 characters and give somebody a reason to click on that link. So that's a challenge in and of itself. With Facebook, you do have a little more room, and there aren't headlines per se. I mean, there are, but they look different. So again, it's a different beast, but you have a little more room. And the thing about content too on social media is that you can repurpose it. So, you know, for example, what I share on LinkedIn also goes to my Twitter feed. But when I'm doing the headline part of what goes on LinkedIn, I have to make sure that I'm within the 140 characters so that when it's shared on Twitter, it's not cut off. Okay,
that's a great point. And, you know, Jonathan's a master at servicing his clients on social media too. So I wanted to give Jonathan a chance to jump in here because I know you're a big user of Twitter and Facebook, Jonathan.
Yeah, I just think it's what I would like to ask Tracey is that I think a lot of agents, for very understandable reasons, say in general, I just don't have the time to blog, I don't have the time to deal with this. But I also feel that they miss out on hiring somebody like yourself to work on really key, what I call key evergreen areas of their website where they can write really, with your help, really valued content about local areas, differences between like the downtown area. I'm just kind of what you would write about Reno. There's an art area, there's a downtown area, and you know there's other areas that that are quite different about the schools and that. And I see so many real estate agents' websites and brokerages where they do have areas about schools or different areas in their region, but they're so shallow, there's really no real value there. So is that area that you really try and work with real estate agents and brokerages about building out what I call evergreen areas, Tracey?
Yes, in fact, I'm working on a project right now for a local agency and brokerage agency. And so you're right, there's a lot of generic content out there. And what makes it valuable is the personalization.
Yeah.
So, but granted, in the real estate business, you could have a vast amount of clients that have different needs, as you all know. But one of the things when you're thinking about content is you need to think about A, who is my audience? And B, what is going to be valuable to them? And I think I'm going to give Thomas props here because I think he does a good job with that. In the content that I see from him and that he sends out, it's interesting. I want to read it. It's something about maybe remodeling my home so he does a good job with that. And I think that's part of it is that you need to step away from the templated content, have someone help you develop things that you can line up on an editorial calendar. So things are going out over a consistent period of time. And the things that are going out are not just things that everybody else is sending out.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sorry, Thomas. But I agree with that, Tracey. But the point I was making out is people think they got to blog a lot. What I like to point out to them is, you know, either working with somebody, a professional like yourself, is look at key areas and write some really quality materials. Add a video to it about an area of the town that's becoming very hot, popular, and really put some effort, and that can pay dividends for year, 2 years in how it generates traffic to your website. Would you agree with that? And is that the kind of strategies you also try and like doing with clients?
I would absolutely agree with that. I think the term evergreen that you use, may or may not be understood by the audience, but I use it as well. So it's something that can live on your site for a while and be valuable to the audience. Is that how
exactly.
you would describe it too, Jonathan?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and finding that it does help to have a professional like me help you find those types of things that aren't going to be, that are timely, but can also live on the site and be valuable to your audience.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that validates the expense of hiring a professional, because I know a lot of people probably think it's kind of like the camera syndrome. Well, Uncle Fred's going to be at the wedding and he owns a camera. We don't need to hire a professional. But if you're going to create evergreen content, something that's going to stand up for at least a couple, 3 years, it's worth the investment of hiring a professional to draft it for you. Because number one, I'm not getting paid to draft my content. I'm hoping I'm going to draw in more clientele because of it, but that's not how I earn my living. And number two, I might not be the best person to determine what is good evergreen content, whereas a professional like you would. So, and that to me is the differentiator between like what Jonathan's point was, is maybe I'm going to have 12 blogs, one a month for the whole year of 2017 that I'm going to hire Tracey to do, because those are going to be my 12 evergreen blog posts. Yet that doesn't stop me from wanting to do daily posts that are smaller and allow me to kind of experiment with posting, and they don't have to be quite as deep or as long. So bringing that up, Tracey, what do people struggle with when it comes to this? I mean, as I mentioned, a lot of people think they're qualified to write their own content, but there's struggles with that. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Well, I think one of the primary reasons people struggle with it is what we call in the profession writer's block.
Right.
Right. I mean, to this day, we just all suffer from it, but my job is to break through it, because I do that for a living. And my job is to help other people break through it too, if they're having that struggle. So that's probably the first thing I run into is I just don't have time for this. I need some help. And the other thing I think people don't spend enough time on really is a true understanding of their audience. Who am I talking to? Put yourself in that position of who you're speaking to with the writing. I think a lot of times people focus on what they have to say instead of the value of what they might have to say to the audience.
That's a good point.
We can all have a lot to say and be good writers, but if no one's reading it or no one's really finding it valuable, that's not helpful at all. The other thing people struggle with, I see a lot of editing as well. So people will bring me content that they have and say, can you polish this up? I'm not really sure this is clear, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of clarity issues that people have when writing. They'll be very verbose when they could say something far more simply. You need to understand if your audience is going to understand the jargon that you may be using, and how to write for different audiences, both clearly and concisely. Because as we all know, our attention spans are like a gnat because of our technology. So to grab and keep the audience's attention is truly a talent, let's say.
Sorry.
Nope, go ahead, sir.
But what I would like to emphasize to the listening audience is this is not easy, folks. Actually, writing really, especially sales copy, that is like what Tracey said, to break down very complicated, like if you're selling a product or online service, and to break it down into the key elements and get that across in a one headline or one tagline, reducing something to its minimum, but also keeping its essence and power takes a lot of experience and a lot of work. And also, I'd just like to see if Tracey agrees with this. Actually, people read content print and online very differently. It's scientifically been proven that people skim read websites. They want to see, is it worth spending more time on this website? So what they tend to do is look at the headline, look at the subheaders, and look at some of the key paragraphs, and then they make a judgment call. Am I staying there or am I going off? Which is very different to print, I would say. Would you agree with some of those statements, Tracey?
Yes, that's an excellent point, Jonathan. That's very true. You know, I think some studies have been done that when somebody clicks on a website, you have close to 3 seconds to keep their attention. And they're skimming kind of from left to right and down the side. And so they've done studies on, you know, how your vision works when you're looking at digital copy versus print copy. So there are ways to break down copy. This falls into the design category too. You want to have a lot of white space. So I've seen websites that are just nothing but words. And I don't even know where to start reading that. There might be a headline or two, but I don't have the time to really, those are really hard to skim. So, you know, you want to put in things like bullet points and great headers and links that lead to other places that are valuable and things like that. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. That is a very important point.
I think that's so important. But we're going to come back and Thomas and myself are going to delve into all the experience that Tracey's got about copy in a minute. And we're going for our break, folks. We'll be back in a minute. We're coming back, folks. We're going to talk with Tracey some more about how you sort out all this copy and get some results. Go on, Thomas, ask the next question.
Sure. Well, a quick comment too. You know, before the break, Tracey was talking about websites, and I just have to say I've got her website up on my adjacent screen, and she practices what she preaches. It's a very clean, easy read at a glance, and I can see the value in that. Just when you brought that up, it caused me to look at your website, and I see the bullet points you're talking about, the white space, and it's not overwhelming with text. You know, you brought something up earlier, Tracey, that I wanted to touch on, and that is editing skills. What is the difference between writing skills and editing skills?
Well, writing is, you know, the absolute creation of the content from a blank page. You know, what's your idea? Where are you going with it? Who is your audience? All of that. Editing comes into play when you've got content already. It may not be fleshed out as much as you'd like it to be, or it may be in a form that you're not thinking is particularly useful, or that, you know, really needs to be polished up from a professional standpoint. You know, not just grammar and punctuation, but things like clarity. Are you answering the questions you think your audience may have? So editing is a different set of skills. And I'll give you an example. A friend of mine's son was applying for college, and he wrote an essay, and he sent me the question that the school asked that he needed to answer. And he said, "Would you please help me with this?" He'd written it. It was good writing. But some of the things that I pointed out to him were there was 3 components of this question the school wanted answers to. He on one of them and really didn't address the other 2. Now that's something that an editor is going to find for you.
So this kind of lends itself to going back to the point we're making here, where some of these projects we're working on really deserve a professional's touch, because you know, I know for myself, I blog daily, and I'm my own worst editor. And what I've learned to do is not blog this post the same day I create it. I let it sit for 24 hours and I reread it the next morning before I post it. That's my form of editing. But you know, This is a challenge for people because they may be a good writer, but they might not be a great editor.
Yeah, I used to teach for one of the universities here. I was teaching writing, and one of the things I would always tell my students is, I mean, and that might just be a couple of hours, or it could be overnight, because I do the same thing. I'll come back to something I've written and read it and think, no, you know, I could have said that better, or
Right.
I really need to move this up further because it's getting lost, that kind of thing. But I would also tell them to read it out loud, because
That's a
you
good
would be
point.
surprised how different your take is on your writing when you're reading it out loud or having someone read it out loud to you. So those are kind of the tips that you can use on your own writing to really kind of clean it up if you don't have a professional involved.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and I also feel, Tracy, get back, it's that a lot of agents and boutique brokerages and that miss such a fantastic opportunities, don't they, Tracy? What I mean by that is it's a bit like our previous conversations with guests, Tracy, where I don't see there's the real world where the agent operates and there's the digital world. And I actually see that they're not separate, they work together, really. And it's a bit like this evergreen content we were talking about. You know, I think getting in somebody like yourself and really working on some of those key landing pages, as I call them, but then the agent can do blogging and other shorter pieces which can be linked around that main topic page, as I call. So then, and which Google absolutely loves. And if you put a lot of localize that content, you will start to dominate that market online. Do you help clients with those? I call it copywriting strategy, really, kind of giving a roadmap so they know what they should be writing about working with you. Is that the type of things that you do, Tracy?
Well, I work with a lot of different types of clients, a lot of different businesses. So, for example, the business I've worked at the most are with financial advisors in the financial services business. So that's a business I understand from having had a career on Wall Street. When I work with, say, for example, a real estate agent or an attorney, I'm not the expert in their business. So what I'll do is brainstorm with them. They've got knowledge I don't have, and then I can help craft the strategy based on our conversation about topics that they think are important. You know, and maybe I will, you know, question that and say, okay, so you think this topic is important, but does your audience maybe want to twist on that a little bit? You know, so I will help them kind of flesh out a plan and a strategy for how we're going to communicate, where we're going to communicate, the audience experience with our communication, and links and landing pages and how those all work as well. I mean, it all comes into the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, I know specifically for real estate that you offer services like helping realtors with their website content and brochures and flyers, but things that they might not realize you can also help them with are things that I think are important, like surveys that you'd send out to your client or a PowerPoint presentation for your listing presentation. There's so many different aspects of our industry where we're required to come up with content, whether it's a questionnaire or a presentation, or even a subject I wanted to talk to you about. What's becoming very trendy is having an ebook. I'm seeing more and more agents coming out with ebooks as a giveaway. Can you speak on that? And do you help write ebooks or ghostwrite, as they say?
I do a lot of ghostwriting. I have not actually done an ebook, but I do have referrals to folks who specialize in that. That again is a specialty, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I think it's a great idea. I love to go onto a website and be able to download something like that. You know, maybe it's gated content, so I have to give something up to get it. Or maybe it's not, but either way, I find that type of information very appealing, and I would think in your business, certainly so. And you brought up another good point that real estate requires a lot of content. And I've seen some brochures. I look at, flyers and things for homes, and I've seen like descriptions of the homes done really well. And I've seen descriptions of the homes not done so well. So I think even simple things like that can take a professional's touch and really just shine better.
What
if
would
you
be
give
an
it a shot.
What do you think would be an example? Can you give an example of like one that was poorly done versus one that was well done, specifically in real estate?
When I look at a flyer and I'm looking at property, there's certain basic things I'm going to want to know, the square footage, how many bedrooms, things like that. And I recently saw on a listing that there was no square footage anywhere. It did have the bedroom and bath. It didn't talk anything about like the kitchen. And there was just a lot of missing basic pieces to it, and that I had to hunt around for. And I thought, well, it shouldn't work like that. And it didn't make me want to call the agent and find out, I'll tell you that.
So in a situation like that where we're creating a flyer or maybe a property website to attract, I've heard it told that people want more of a story of what it's like to live in that house versus just all the bullet points of it. But is there like a happy medium that you see? Or, I mean, what's your take on that? Like how would a well-presented flyer come across with that combination?
I think a well-presented flyer would have the basics and in a format that's easily read, if that's bullet points or up in a box in a corner or whatever. I like the idea of if there's a history to the home, if there's a history to the area, like John's was talking about, that sort of localized content.
Right.
If if you can tell that story, or maybe they're in the award-winning school district, what have you. I just think there is a happy medium there. And each property is different, so you may or may not have the more interesting personal parts to it, but I bet you could find them if you really looked.
Okay. Yeah, I see it as the benefit of working on term with somebody like Tracey is for agents and brokerages is working out a strategy, because I also see a tendency you need to. It's online world, so you do need to react and be quick on your feet. But also there's a time where you really need to look at content and have a calendar and plan out a strategy. And I see a lot of times with a lot of agents and a lot of brokerages, stuff is rushed too much and it doesn't put them in the best light. So you've got to learn a balance of still being able to respond to rapidly, but also not leaving everything to the last minute. It's a strange balance in a way, but it's a crucial one. Would you agree with that, Tracey?
Absolutely. I think, again, we talked about the procrastination issue earlier. People, they know they have to do this writing or they have to produce this content, and they'll leave it up to the last minute to do it, and then the quality suffers. So if you have a professional who will sit down with you and have a meeting with you and plan out an editorial calendar, what's your blog going to be that month? What's your Twitter feed look like? What's the content curation? Say we're picking a topic for March. Where are we going to find articles to share on social media? What are you going to blog about that topic? So when you have something laid out in front of you like that, it's easier to hit the deadlines, I think, for most people, rather than just, as you say, I've got 2 weeks to figure out how I'm going to do this.
Yeah, and I think it's really linked. I'm going to sound like a gramophone record here, folks, but I just really planning these key landing pages about your region and area, and then you working with a professional like Tracey about everything should be around additional information around these landing pages, and it could be about a property that you're marketing. It will be in one of these regions, and you can have links from that property page to your key landing page that has real unique content about that particular area in your region. And the more that Google sees that, the more power your local website will get. And that's why it's important to work with somebody like Tracey. So what to kind of broaden the question to you, Tracey, how much has it changed in your space that you have to really not only think in somebody reading this, but also Google as well about search engines and about Google's place in all this? How much does this enter your mind when you're consulting with clients?
Well, it has changed. The whole SEO world has changed quite a bit over, the last, let's say, 10 years. I'm sure you are more than well aware of that, Jonathan, right?
Yeah.
And I used to see, and I see a lot less of this now, I used to see a lot of strictly keyword stuffed content.
Right.
You know it when you read it, and Google clearly caught on to that. It's like, no. So, as you say, they value, Google and search engines value quality content now, not cut and paste, keyword stuffed content that doesn't always make a lot of sense and is just thrown in with a bunch of words that are clearly trying to get the search engines. So it's funny, I used to have a different conversation with my clients years ago about the keyword issue, and now I've almost dropped it. And by that I mean keyword research we do, because it is still important. It's just not the main focus of the content now. The quality of the content is more the focus. And a professional like me knows how to put those keywords in there that we've researched, and do it in ways that are not offensive, for lack of a better term, that work within the content.
Yeah, obviously nobody knows precisely what Google, how it judges. It keeps that very tight to its chest. But it's also well known that the key areas that they do look at, that's been researched, that influences them. So, this is why, but we also live in the world where we have got unlimited budgets. But why I feel building up really good landing pages and then doing linking to them and getting a professional in to at least edit your key pages and give you some ideas about what should go on to those key pages about different regions. You will get long-term benefit from that, folks. And then depending on your budget and your resources, how much you can keep on either as an editor or somebody that produces, a professional like Tracey, is really down to your budget and your business requirements. But what I would stress with you is it really does benefit you to work with a professional like Tracey as much as possible you can, because really Google, it's even got, it's got worse actually, folks. Just pasting content from other sites will actually get you penalized, will actually reduce the effectiveness of your online marketing quite considerably, and that's why you should avoid it like the plague. So just to round up, Tracey, how can people get hold of you and learn more about your vast experience in this area?
Well, excuse me, they can go to LinkedIn and view my profile, Tracey Franks, my background, and you'll also see some writing samples on there. Also, my website is wordsandmoney.com, and it's named that because of my financial background and a lot of work that I do with financial services individuals and small business owners, entrepreneurs, anybody who really wants to grow their business and use words to make money.
Sounds great to me. How can people get hold of you, Thomas? Well, they can do similar. They can go to my website, thomasjnelsonrealtor.com. And I'm also present on LinkedIn and Facebook, and love to connect with you. I also want to remind people we'd love for you to connect with us on the show and subscribe to our Real Estate Agent podcast.
That's really helps. And if you leave a review, and me and Thomas Reed will read it during the show, even if it's good or bad or indifferent. But we love reviews on iTunes, and we really are going to attempt to get more active on social media and set up a live feed on Facebook in the new year. So you'll be able to comment live and watch it on Facebook, folks. That sounds good. So thank you so much, Tracey, for coming on the show, and
yes, thank you.
My co-host. How you can reach me is quite simple, folks. You can go to the Mel Wright Real Estate Agent Show. You can see these shows. I can also be putting the video on the page notes that goes with the show and adding more value content. And Thomas is going to be helping me with the writing as well. So we're going to be adding more resources to that. If you need to get a hold of me personally, the best way is to email me at Jonathan, JONTHAN, at mel-wright.com. I will answer in a couple of days, or follow me on Twitter, my personal feed, which is at Jonathan Denwood, and I'm pretty active on that. And you can also get a hold of me on LinkedIn. I think they're the three main areas that you can get a hold of me. So that's been a great show, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So I kind of finished the external recording, Tracey, but what I'll probably do, like with the other show, is we have an additional 5 minutes, and I will put the video on the page, and we call it bonus content, and we'll probably we'll say that during the show. So I know kind of I went on a little bit, Tracey, repeat myself a bit, this evergreen content, but I think it is really important, because a lot of people think they've got to hire somebody like you almost continuously, and that the budget is out their price range. But the reality is they just need to really concentrate initially on some key pages, and then get you in either to help with it or as an editor, really. And they kind of worry about price too much, really. Would you agree with that, Tracey?
Yes, I would. It's kind of analogous to what Thomas said earlier, in that you kind of don't think, well, I'm not sure I really need to pay that much for this kind of a service. But when you see the results of the before and after, it is well worth it. And it doesn't mean that you need to have me on retainer. It doesn't mean that, I work with clients piecemeal sometimes. Some people do have me work regularly, but I would say the majority of clients use me piecemeal for, maybe it's a strategy session, it's an editorial calendar development, it's content curation for their social media. And you'd be surprised at the value for what you get when you hire a professional writer or editor, and how much better your site reads and looks because of it.
Yeah, a thing that Thomas pointed out to me a couple of weeks ago, also is stay with the facts, folks. When you're talking about schools, restaurants, anything, just stay with the facts. Just stay with, how many people, how many students qualified from the high school, the rating of the restaurant. Just stay with the facts. Don't give opinion, because opinion you can get sued, can't you? Facts are facts, aren't they, Tracey? Would you agree with that as well?
Yes, absolutely, I would. You just stick with the facts, just the facts.
Yeah.
Because another thing I would like your opinion on, and Thomas has been quite honest with this himself with me, and it's a lot of agents, and I don't classify Thomas as one of these, want to talk about themselves and about what they've achieved in the industry, and they've got every right to be proud of that. But when it comes to actually influencing new clients, I don't think new clients are so interested in that. They're more interested in things that would help them. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, your statistics are important on some level, but it's almost like we talked about the flyer for the house. There are basics but there's also that personalization that's important, and I think that's true for agents' bios as well. I want to get a feel for who I'm working with. Am I going to want to work with this person? Their background is important, but What's their story?
Yeah, you're so right there. I cringe at the amount of agents. We do it a lot with a little site that we provide with MailRite, but we strongly advise them to provide something different, is just copying their LinkedIn bio and putting it on their About Us page. And it's a disaster, isn't it, Tracey? Because what they don't realise is almost on all websites, the second most visited page on an agent's website, apart from the home page, is going to be their About Us page. So it's so important that it's powerful, isn't it, Tracey?
Absolutely. And for an example now, the project I'm working on for this real estate firm here, the bios that I'm writing for the agents, I sent them a questionnaire. There was about 10 questions on it, some of which were related to their business and the types of folks they work with, and some of which were personal. And, you know, they had the option to give me that kind of information, but at the same time, that's what's going to warm up that bio. That's what's going to make it real. And so what I'm trying to do is strike a balance there.
Right. No, you're so right. You guys are both making such good points, because I think first and foremost, our clients or our prospects are going to see what's in it for them. You know, what pain are we removing? What problem are we solving? What friction are we eliminating from them getting from A to B? Then they probably want to know more about the human side of us. Nobody's ever asked me to rattle off my awards or my designations or my stats. I rarely get even asked how long I've been in the business. Nobody really cares. I think they want to work with a personality that they can align themselves with. Because, you know, let's face it, in this market, we're going to be together for a few months. And that's something you want to consider when you're hiring a realtor or anyone that you're going to hire, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them. And there's intimate information that you share, and that's not easily done with someone that you're not warming up to.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's so important, folks, to really work with a professional on that bio page. I think we're going to wrap it up for the bonus content that you'll be watching this on the website, on the YouTube channel. And I just want to thank Tracey for coming on the show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We did, and I think we've covered some great stuff. So I'm going to finish the bonus stuff, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.